Hey, everybody, welcome, welcome, welcome. I am actually jumping on before the broadcast starts in order to say hello to everybody. It is wonderful to be with you, but then not be with you. So, our team has been doing a wonderful job trying to get a lot of these recordings out. And this tonight is also a recorded version of our Melanin Life and the Black family. It was a dynamic conversation. I hope that you can, while you're sitting here with me, like and share, 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 like and share. Get some other individuals connected to this live experience tonight. While you will be watching us on video, we will be in the chat with you all, having conversations, asking questions. But I know it's been 2 weeks and I wanted you all to see my face and just let you know that we are still alive. We're glad to be alive. As Bishop has said, just one more day. He has kept me, hallelujah. Yes, he has kept us another day, and we are so glad about it. So, we are in this space and we are going to share with you what our conversation led us to. And we would love your feedback. We want to see what you're sharing, what you are thinking about the conversation. We want to chat with you. I promise I am on one side. I think I'm going to be on YouTube side. Somebody's going to be on Facebook side. Somebody's going to be on the TikTok side. So wherever you find us, we want to make sure that you are getting in on the conversation. Before we get to that, though, let me just kind of provide some updates to you all. Life Forum is expanding. It is a tremendous, tremendous, what we call teaching expression of the Evolution Church podcasting experience for us. It is our mental wealth hub. We connect a lot of things: spirituality, creativity, and mentality, right? We blend all of those circles together, and that makes up the Evolution Church as a whole. We expand, we explore, and we evolve. And so we're going through some system updates and adjustments. One of the updates is the subscriber base. If you were connected to the subscriber base, we have discontinued that service simply because we have other ways to stay connected to individuals. So if you are not connected to YouTube, you need to be, because a lot of our streaming will be based directly from that platform. The other social media handles, they get the stream just by overflow, but YouTube holds all the receipts. It holds all the backstories. It holds all the old recordings. And in time, some of those are going to come back to our forefront, and we're going to recycle some of those because they are still relevant and current, specifically the land assignments teaching. The land assignments teaching, that thing has been in my spirit lately, and I want to bring that to the forefront because there are regional assignments that I believe sometimes we are missing because we don't honor or understand the land that we are living in and the region that we are assigned to. So I'm going to bring that back, but we are also going to be doing some live things with you all. Tonight ends our Black History segment. And while we end the discussion, we never end the conversation because Black history is history. And so it will always be a part of my conversation because I'm straight up melanin. I'm Black. Yes, I am. And all of our partners are, and we express that in everything that we do. So tonight's topic about the Black family, I think it's going to bless you, inspire you, and give you insight regarding your own family. And that's what we aim to do. So take a listen, and again, share it with some other individuals. And lastly, get prepared for next month, because next month we honor women, and we're going to be doing a few things around that space with women, highlighting their special uniqueness and their giftedness, their talent. I'm hoping to bring some guests on with me. We might do some of that live, some of that recorded. Just depends on time frames. We're all trying to get to the end of all of the journeys that we got going on right now. So sometimes it's just a busy time, but we want to make sure that we get everyone connected. I think next week's topic, we're going to talk about women in sports. right? We hear a lot about our brothers and, what they do on the national level, but we don't really often talk about a lot that goes on with our women in sports. So Kara Holloman is going to join us and lead us through that track of honoring women in sports. And so look out for that. We probably will try to be live for that. I'm not sure yet. Don't hold me to it. Just because we want to make sure that everybody is aligned and their schedules work. So while I'm talking, I want you to keep liking and keep sharing. Send it out to someone who you feel will be connected to this conversation. And then look out. Over the next few weeks, I'm going to do something in the middle of the week. Someone made a request and I thought it was phenomenal. If you haven't thought that you could, I want you to hear this because we always want suggestions about what it is that we could talk about on Live Forum. Recently, probably about a week ago, a viewer asked us if we could discuss mental health or the psychological aspect and how it relates to prophecy. So immediately when I got that information, I went to work. My brain started going to work with individuals that I could connect with, incorporate in that process. I started to think about all of my own history prophetically and apostolically, and then all of my education in the mental health space and continuing education. And it just opened up a whirlwind of information. So I'm really looking forward to that conversation. Two therapists already have confirmed that they're going to join that conversation. They have that therapeutic background and then they have the prophetic background. And so I think that's going to be a really exciting conversation. Stay tuned. If you are interested in how the blend works, because it is working, whether you know it or not, that insight, that intuition, that leading of the Holy Spirit regarding mental health concerns and connections, we will be able to lay that out in front of you over the next whenever we get together to do that conversation. And so as soon as we do it, I'll make the announcement. I'll let you know so that you can grab it. Listen, tonight we are talking about Melanin Life and the Black family. So here are the partners. They are coming on. I know that this is going to inspire you, and keep talking to us because again, we are in the chat and we're going to be talking to you. Let's go.
Hey, everybody, welcome to Life. This is one of the panelists of the Life Forum. My name is Shazetta Morris, affectionately known as Coach She. It is always a pleasure to be here along with the other four in the crew. This is where we bring each other life, right? We are a
Yeah.
family, as our commercial has so wonderfully
Yeah.
said. And by the way, let me take a pause to put a coin in that meter and just highlight the wonderful pieces of our commercial. If you took the time to watch it, let us know what you think about it. We would love your feedback and we want to get you connected to the facilitator and the originator of all of that wonderful work. They
Yes.
hail out of Texas. They did some good work on that piece. And so we want to make sure that we get them funneled your way. Listen, the panelists, the forumers, are going to introduce themselves tonight. And our last panelist, Bernicia Jackson, is going to take it from there and facilitate this conversation on melanin. This is the month of Melanin Life. So we just took the spin of Black history and just stuck the word melanin there. And tonight we are going to talk about melanin and the family. And we want you to join in on this conversation, especially if you are of our hue. Y'all know what hue means, right? If you all are of our hue, we want you to add to the conversation of the history of the Black or melanin family. And so stay tuned. Please like, please share. Send it out to some individuals who you feel will be benefited from this conversation. Somebody else introduce yourself and take it from here.
Hey, welcome to life. Oh, you got
Oh.
flash.
Ah,
Yep.
ah,
Adam, I am your friendly neighborhood prophet.
come
Blessings. Let's
on.
go.
I think I'm mad that my husband gave that to you. We got to talk about that.
And I'm
Yes.
when he said it,
I
it
love
hit
it.
me. Boom! I'm running with it.
We
Listen,
got to
I
talk. We got to talk about that
listen.
real.
I love it. I love it because it's so different. Because first of all, hey, there ain't no prophets
Right.
that's trying to engage with the neighborhood because everybody wants to go global. They always want to go to the nation, so don't nobody want to go to nobody's neighborhood. And then on top of that, they darn sure ain't nice.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
Come on. They're not nice.
Thank you for that whole explanation.
they not friendly. No,
Hmm.
no. And then they
That's a good
take
spin on that.
and then they take pride for that too. Like why is y'all? Because y'all nasty, so y'all think that's good. Y'all think that's all right. Okay, so anyway, hi guys. My name is Pastor Brian Mars. Nice to meet you all. God bless you. And yeah, we're gonna take it from there. Go ahead.
Hey y'all. I'm Brianna, aka Bree. I'm the comedian. Y'all see my
Okay.
Black History nails? I didn't show y'all. See them Black History colors? Y'all always concerned about Valentine's Day in February. No, baby, this is melanin month. Hmm?
Melanin month.
Throw the M's up for you. Melanin
Eminem.
month, baby.
I don't know how to do that.
Cross. Okay, we're gonna cross the two middle fingers. Boom.
Right. I think I got arthritis.
I learned how to do that
All right.
because we used to do that in Chester. We used to do that in
Yep.
Chester. We'd be like, "What side? What's?"
Yeah. So just turn it upside down. All right, I'm Bree. But
I'm just going to
yeah,
go like that. Amen.
nice to meet
Praise
y'all.
We don't do nothing normal. We could never
Exactly.
just introduce ourselves and say
Mhm.
hello.
Oh, I love it though. B, you
Ooh,
take it away. Introduce yourself and then start this conversation.
good evening.
Good evening.
I'm your friendly. No, 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 I'm not. I'm gonna say I'm your friendly neighborhood. It is I, Lady V. I am Bernicia Jackson. I will be
Yeah,
your facilitator on tonight.
Yeah.
Yes.
Tonight,
Tonight.
tonight we're running.
we're running. A
Now,
part
B,
of our
you just said that we don't do nothing normal, and then you ran right
We
into
go to
that not normal.
unnormal,
I just
the
proved my point.
non-normal.
I had to prove my point.
Right.
Yes, ma'am.
um, again, as Coach said, I don't like calling you that. Coach said, following continuing our month on melanin. Tonight, I'm going to be discussing things pertaining to melanin life. Now, when I was thinking about it, like I had to like really like write down. I had like maybe like 15 things that I felt like were issues or not necessarily issues, that things that affect people of color, in particular for the month of February, African Americans. There were a number of situations or things that applied to melanin life that I believe, and I got some assistance on narrowing those things down to highlight on tonight. So
Can I just shout this out for a second, B? Hold on. Because B sent over 6 talking points, y'all. 6.
yeah.
Come on, Sticks.
The family's an
6.
interesting subject.
But remember, she called out all of the extra talking points. I said, look at this woman of God. She done got her 6. Yes, ma'am. So we helped condense them to 3, which I think are very powerful. So B, you did an excellent job with that.
Absolutely.
Oh, so and these are a strong three, and we going to get through them all tonight. Which were the most, we feel like were the three that were most pressing. The first one was well, first I'm sorry, let me go back. The first I'm going to start with is systemic racism. Now, systemic racism is described as patterns of behavior, policies, or practices that are part of a structure of an organization which create disadvantages for racialized persons. They, and all of that jargon just basically says policies and that were implemented to hold a race of people, black particularly, people of color, African Americans, black and brown people. So I when I went to research that, I highlighted a couple of things like um as it pertains to systemic racism. One thing, practices that were in order was the wealth gap. It was hard for Black people to gain employment due to racism and segregation, unequal access to education, discriminatory housing practices, and employment practices. And one of those things that I want to highlight, they are not, I want to start by saying they are not quote unquote in practice today. It is illegal for some of these things. That does not mean that it doesn't still happen, but it is illegal for these practices to be in order. One of those was redlining. Redlining is denying financial services to people based on race, withholding money from neighborhoods, or restrictive communities. Um, Now, has anyone ever heard of this term?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes,
Okay.
because
Uh,
what
Talking
it
about red,
does is,
you said
right, it puts
redlining?
people, yes,
Oh yeah.
because it kind of keeps it keeps people and it's so funny that you're talking about this redlining piece because even now there are certain we live in a space where they're doing a lot of
Mhm,
building, and you'd be surprised at how many of new communities are planned
mhm.
with
Yes.
how many people can be in those new communities. And it is so interesting, um, because even here we are the minority in our
Mhm,
community as it relates to numbers, because of course we're in South Florida, there's a high percentage of Hispanic, Latina in this particular area. So sometimes I drive around and be like, I just want to spot us somewhere. And then
listen,
we in here.
Where
I
we
was
at?
I
You
was
know, we in here, but the communities are planned. Adam, do you have that experience too?
absolutely. I was just about to say when me and Steph moved here to Texas 2 years ago from California, it was rare to drive into a place in California where you didn't see somebody that looked like you. And
Mm,
in Texas, um, there are a um, there are a bunch of communities that are going up, right? They're being built, and each one of these communities, right? They have their own church. They have their own church built into the plan, and so you're seeing that they're not, but when you drive through the community again, you don't see us. So it's like, okay, so it almost looks like, not accusing, but it almost looks like we're giving the funding to what is going to push our culture. Red line, we're not going to allow you to have what you need. And that's that red line, like that statement, all things being equal. Shut up. All things ain't equal.
right. 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 Anybody else before I go on? Brian?
Oh, listen. When we first moved in here, when I tell you we were so scattered abroad, um, we was when we finally saw somebody look like us, we were hi, like we was like like when we walked through our neighborhood, we was like, yes, there's somebody else here. How you doing? This good lord.
Mhm.
Yeah. So
It's
yeah.
it
I'm sorry.
it just proves that point that it's still happening
Yeah.
Mhm,
in different ways and in different cultures. It that premise of that concept is still living in other things. So it's like, okay, we've got certain things rolled back or saying, we've written a law to discontinue it, but it's really just morphed into another practice that hides it.
That speaks to how
mhm,
brilliant white
Hmm.
people are. Do you notice
Hmm.
that? How brilliant you have to be to continue the same narrative for 200 years. And as long as you
Wow.
keep on changing certain things about it, you can continue the system.
I wouldn't call it
Yeah, that's
brilliant. I
interesting.
call it being just bitter. You know how bitter you gotta be
I
I'm
mean,
not
mhm.
evil.
creating systems,
Wait,
the
do your eyes like that again?
how brilliant you gotta be. No, it's how bitter you gotta be to
it's
Yeah.
continue to create these systems to keep people out who aren't phased. Like, who cares? We're still gonna do it.
right, but I mean, I think it's also
Yeah.
desperate. I think it's also desperate
I'm
because
like, stop.
we also
Stop.
have to consider that in 20 probably, I think if the statistics are correct, by 2030, that I believe that black and brown people are going to be the majority.
Yeah.
in the United States. But even with that, I do believe that isn't that sad to say because I want white people to join the church. Okay,
They could never
okay.
Well,
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 so
but
okay. Hold on. Okay, I'm gonna say it. Okay.
Don't be holding it back now.
come on,
Okay.
Bishop.
Okay. So I think that Lord, I done said it already though. But okay. So
What? Wait.
I mean, because I wanna, because I'm like, Lord,
What?
Lord, by the time I get done talking, I'll be like, Lord, this only gonna be colored in the church.
I'm telling you.
Well, the
But
lie is right. The lie is that um, white people who are in power
mhm.
are pushing the notion that white people are heading towards extinction. And as long as that's a real thing for them, and because it's a real thing for them, that's why they're making moves. But the only reason why they're heading towards extinction is because they couldn't leave the black booty alone. And if they
Oh Lord.
if they weren't
Oh Lord.
if
Tell us
they
how you
didn't
really
believe
feel,
in
Adam.
mix, they said they didn't want to mix the races, but we can see a whole bunch of mixing. What's up? But there was a whole bunch of mixing of the races, and that's the reason why they're struggling where they're struggling now. But they're battling. But to Bernicia's point, she can they all the redlining and the things that they're doing, that they're still doing, is under the guise of them becoming extinct while they're wiping us out.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I really think it's a desperation aspect because I think it's more so in the DNA rather than I don't think it's Americanized, but I think it's overall because the European concept has a history of coming into a space. I'm like and I'm seeing it even now. It's like I don't understand why certain people feel like they can just come into other people's things and just take it over and then get upset when people try to do the same thing like here in the United States. How dare you come? First of all, this country was not even yours. You came in here unwelcome. The natives here welcomed you with open arms. You
Hmm.
killed them. You gave them uncurable diseases that purposely that they could not fight off. You tried to enslave them. When that didn't work, you brought other people over here, and now all of a sudden, in the year of our Lord 2025, you're starting to see people from the same from the same place, from a different part of the Americas, try to come over here, and then you have the unmitigated gall to have a
Unmitigated.
problem with the fact that
The
how dare you come into our country? How dare you do the same thing that we did? But you didn't do the. Listen, I don't understand it, but I do feel like it's a European it's in the European DNA because honestly, when it comes to an international state of view, they are the minority.
They stink.
But Bernicio, I mean, why we got to keep on talking about old stuff? Why can't we just do kumbaya? Why do we got to keep on talking about what white people did to us? That ain't fair.
It's
Because it's
sure.
not, because it ain't the old is not hasn't passed away.
But we can continue to speak about the Holocaust. Please.
And going to.
Don't get
Listen,
me.
that's passed down in their tradition, and I don't even listen. I actually love the Jews for that.
Yeah,
They
Mhm.
Yeah.
yeah,
talk
yeah.
about that by the time that they are at bar mitzvah age, at the age of 12, they know all about their experience in the Exodus and the Holocaust. They rehearse it, they recite it, and they
Hmm.
intentionally pass it through their generation. So I actually love that piece when we're talking about this here now, this systemic racism, how it has affected BIPOC communities and culture, specifically the Black in the BIPOC, is
Yeah.
alarming. Right? I like when Bernicia started reading about it. Continue with that reading, please, because I want to hear
Well,
more about that
before you
space.
do it, Benicia, did you know um, that they said that the reason why they don't mind talking about and fighting over the Holocaust is simply because those Jews were mostly white.
Mm.
But we ain't gonna have the
What?
conversation about the people of color, the black and brown
Yeah, no,
annihilation.
they left them alone.
Right, we're not gonna talk about that story. Let's keep the whole situation tight as long as we keep it white. That's why
Right.
they'll talk about the Jews. Okay, that's that. I thought that was wild.
That is wild. That is
Mhm,
wild.
mhm.
Um, s- Still on the subject of redlining, there was something called insurance redlining, where they refused to write policies for homes in minority neighborhoods.
Mhm.
Mhm.
So like going back to the or with the definition of redlining. So like what happens is these poor African Americans, we finally get a house, and now if because of the conditions of the neighborhood, if they get broken into or if a flood occurs, the insurance companies would not insure these homes because because of the conditions of the neighborhood. It was too black, like impoverished neighborhoods that they were at risk. Um
B, you know why that's trifling? Let me tell you why that's trifling. The
Wow.
reason why that's trifling is because as soon as our children started getting killed, they started coming to the door, knocking on our doors to write
yes.
insurance policies for our children.
Uh-huh.
And so you
Yes.
see the whole conflict of that?
Yes.
So
Wow.
you want to insure our home, but now you want to offer us insurance because you're anticipating that our boys, our
Are going to
children are
die.
going to be killed.
Yeah. Yeah.
Unbelievable.
Unbelievable. That's enraging.
But they went from running away to not to beating doors down. Like, no,
Right.
what y'all got? Well, hey, we talk to you about this policy. That's crazy. That's
It is. It's
absolutely nuts.
terrible.
But if the house, if you write it on the house and you have insurance, then they gotta pay out money. If
Hmm.
it's on the house, they
Mhm.
gotta pay out money. But if you get the insurance on the child, depending on how they do the clauses, right, they can talk themselves
Hmm.
out of it.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. And there was something called steering, where they were like directing renters and buyers to certain neighborhoods. So
Hmm.
like, all right, I'm from Chester. So like in Chester we had um we had like a KFC. We had something back in the day they used to call Geno's, but we've
Yes.
never Geno's chicken, but
Yeah.
we've never had Chester has never had a McDonald's.
Hmm.
There's never been like a Walmart or a Target. They've all been like on the outskirts of the city. Um so like I when you think when I thought of when I was reading about steering, I said, wow, that definitely happened in my city because we there is and to this day Chester doesn't even have a market, like
Hmm.
officially Chester
Hold on,
doesn't have a
Bernicia,
market.
but you're not saying why. Why is there
Um
no why?
well, I feel like it's a well, one, because Chester has a high crime rate.
Okay. Okay.
Um, it's a predominantly black city, probably 96% black. Um, it's a predominantly black city, and when those corporations come into the area scaling, looking for places to go, they are directed to Brookhaven. They're directed to Aston. Um, Eddystone has a low crime rate too, but it's good enough to hold up a business. Not little old Chester. We're good now. We have a soccer stadium. Chester has the Philadelphia Union, but it's the Philadelphia Union. It has
Right.
nothing to do with
Yes,
Chester.
sir.
The
Hmm.
name is not it's not being highlighted as Chester. It's being
Hmm.
like the casino went
Hmm.
from Harris Chester to Harris
Hmm.
Philadelphia.
Hmm.
There are a lot of
Hmm.
organizations that are benefiting off of the city,
Hmm.
but
Wow.
Chester is not reaping any of those benefits. But they
Hmm.
were steered that direction, but it quickly removed.
Hmm.
So like that kind of stuck out to me. As for I don't know if there are any other cities in the state. I feel like that this has happened to, like, but
Hmm.
um Chester has taken a lot of blows. We've caught the
Hmm.
fall for a lot of different things. But again, the city didn't used to be predominantly black.
Mhm.
It was very split. There were a lot of race inequality marches. My grandmother, it's a store, a restaurant. I don't know if y'all ever heard of Woolworths.
Mhm.
There
Yes.
was a
Mhm.
restaurant in Chester. My grandmother was the first African American to work that lunch counter. It was whites only. So there used to be diversity in the city, and also a lot of racial discrimination. But when the crime rates raised, a lot of those people moved out. Um, and going back to redlining, all of those people like got grouped together. Honestly, we didn't always want to be together.
Mhm.
Like
Mhm.
black, like they think that all black people stick together. No, honey, that we was trying to go other places and be mixed in with other races so that we can reap some of those benefits. But
Mhm.
redlining pushed us together. We didn't have a
Mhm.
choice.
Yeah.
Mhm.
We all
And
got grouped,
redlining
huh?
and redlining was one of the preparations for HUD, for the housing urban development, because they were steering us into certain neighborhoods,
Correct.
knowing that they were about to demolish those neighborhoods in order
Mm-hmm.
to build freeways through some of the most productive black cities and neighborhoods.
Correct. Yeah.
So
Well,
interesting because even with that, so we talk about the systems that are surrounding it, right? Talk about
mhm.
what you experienced, Bernicia, or what you observed on how those impacted the actual Black families that you saw in income, jobs, education.
Say that again. I'm sorry.
Say from what you just observed in your experience, these
Oh, okay.
systems that we're talking about, right? Redlining, how people couldn't move into certain areas, or what came through the city of Chester. Although we know it is physically in Chester, it doesn't bear its name. When you think about that, that systemic space, how do you think it has impacted the Black families living there?
Um, as like I feel like we have been heavily impacted. I think that the city, like I think you talked about this a long time ago. Like Chester is a port, so we have
Mhm.
received a lot of things, but we have been like dishing out a lot of stuff, but we have not been getting that back.
Mhm.
And we have not been receiving as much as we've been giving.
Mhm.
And I think that families have been heavily impacted by this, like work prospects, things that were supposed to be bringing work jobs into the city have not been doing that. So like two-parent households have become one because people one parent, not even necessarily the men, women have been walking away too.
Mhm. Wow.
Parents, people have been giving up. There are a lot of single dads. There are a lot of
Mhm.
single dads out here, and we have really the city has I'm sorry not to talk about Chester, but because it happens in a lot of cities, we have fell prey to a lot of things. Like people have been looking for other vices to help them cope with the stress of trying to maintain households, like drugs and alcohol, like all of those things that have plagued the city have become outlets to deal with the stress of not being able to balance households. Like people have
Mhm.
just been using the giving into their vices.
Mhm.
I think has been a strain the mental health of individuals as we was talking about all of those things that are impacted, but all of those things have come into play.
Mhm.
Um and we just been taking blow after blow, and it's
Mhm.
hard to recover. Once you get down, it's hard to climb back up when you're in a ditch.
I feel
Yeah,
like I'm
I
talking.
remember.
Yes.
I
And
feel like I'm talking to a councilwoman right there.
Right,
right.
but it's so true. Even when and I asked her from her experience because, and grew up. Brian Brian grew up in Chester as well. I came to the city, first as a revivalist, and then when we married, and what I remember, and B brings it up tonight, because one of the
Mhm.
things that I found out was the motto of the city. And I preached it. I said, "Did y'all know that the motto of this city is what Chester makes
That's a
makes
message.
Chester?"
Yeah.
And the people,
Say that again.
they even what Chester makes Chester.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's the motto of the city. And so some people didn't remember it, or when I said it, they recalled it. And we put a prophetic declaration around that space.
Mhm.
to remind people of the significance of where they live and who they are. And that's what she talked about. Because I remember in that message, I remember few messages, but that one I did, because there's
Mhm.
so much that comes through that space, but doesn't stay in that space.
Yeah.
It's a transitional space. So, if if you're a farmer and you're picking fruit, you fill all your buckets up, right? And then you just take the excess home for yourself. Nothing stays in Chester. It is a transportation portal, but everything going into Philly has got to come through it. Everything going into Delaware has got to come through it, but nothing stayed. And I
Mhm.
feel like that's a lot of our inner cities or our marginalized communities that have these experiences, and it impacts us. You talk about individuals coping with things, and the challenge of that is so interesting to me, because the systemic part about that is that once they start coping, they're using drugs, alcohol. Then they're getting our brothers and our sisters are then getting arrested for these drugs. Then they're put in incarceration. And so it
Yeah.
takes people away from the families, and the families are now living with grandparents and aunts and stuff. And then we've got a emergence of grandbabies living in big mama houses, because there's this cycle of things, and people only assume that people can make a better choice. But if you
Yeah.
never pay attention to the whole cycle of the system, you don't understand how people are pushed into some of the vices that they're in order to just manage life. Otherwise, they're going to unalive themselves, and many have.
We all
Mhm.
remember in the early 80s, just say no to drugs. What's the pro? Even though we're bringing the drugs to your area, just say no. And so I'm sorry, y'all. Please forgive me. I do have levels of compassion, but I find it very difficult over the past 2 or 3 years to listen to this opioid epidemic. When white people are like, we gotta help our kids, when we were begging for that same help, and they were like, oh no, just say no. It's like these they didn't care about the determining factors when it was us, but now they want to talk about it now. Why? Because if they were honest about the factors in the 80s, they would have had to release finances and funds to fix the issue. But now it's because it's their people. Now let's get them into programs. Let's do this.
Yeah.
And the honesty. I was having a conversation with somebody who wasn't happy with me at the time, and while we were talking, I said, if you know me, then you know I compare and contrast. So if I see this going on in this situation, when I look at this situation, I'm hoping that there's an honest comparison right here. And if there's no comparison, then I'm going to contrast it. So it's that's the reason why black people always seem to come off angry. It's because we compare and contrast. We put one era up against another era, and we're like, this one thing don't look like the other. And
Mhm.
so when so in Chester, right? Here's my question, because the train goes through Chester,
Mhm.
and I just it just hit me what y'all said. What Chester makes Chester.
Makes sense.
I I remember people used to tell me, stay out of Chester, but I had to go. I had a girlfriend down there, so I had to go down to Chester a couple of times, and for some reason,
Oh,
I never felt like I was in danger.
oh,
Me, I had a girlfriend down in Chester.
what's her name?
Huh?
Who was it?
What's her name?
Oh,
Not
don't be
on the
nosy.
live. You're not gonna ask that man what her name
Don't
was.
be nosy. I'm married now.
Oh,
Um,
but
but
Right,
but
that
because
that
but
right
just
because
means that
because
you
because
you might
Chester
have been
only
no.
passing
because
through.
Chester
So
only
so
but this
yeah.
big, so
So
we
I
might know her.
listen. So I had a
Talk to you offline.
she moved from Conshohocken. She moved from Conshohocken to Chester,
Oh, she
and
ain't from Chester.
and, oh, that's mean. Don't be
I mean,
mean.
she
so look. but they were original. Her parents were originally from there. But this was
Okay.
the thing. When I went down there, I didn't feel the danger. I mean, you always watch yourself, but unless you don't see those people as your people, you have a problem with that.
Yeah.
And and so I'm like, that's why I don't get it. But whenever we get into these situations and we start talking like this, when you only Bible people are going to understand what I'm about to say. But the moment that Bernicia started talking, she sounds like Nehemiah to me.
Hmm.
Somebody who's talking about her city and was like, "Hey, we want change," and and we'll go down another route. Never mind. All right, redlining.
Y'all know what that is?
Wow.
Yes.
Gonna happen in this year, and that
Y'all know what that is? It's amazing.
Evolution Church South Florida would like to invite you to worship with us. You can connect via our second Sunday virtual community or meet us in person for our fourth Sunday experience. Both begin at 3 p.m. sharp. Remember, this is the place where we explore, expand, and evolve. See you soon.
Wow.
Yeah, so that that was good. But that was redlining. Um, which Adam brought up a point, which brings me to my next highlight, which was mass incarceration.
Hmm.
Um, and we all know what mass incarceration, but mass incarceration started in the 70s. And then, it really like kicked into high gear in like the 80s when they started with the war on drugs. Like Adam just mentioned it. But what first lady was that? Was that Barbara Bush?
Reagan.
Hmm.
Reagan, or
Reagan.
was that
Nancy
Reagan's
Reagan.
wife? Reagan's wife was say no to drugs. Just say no. Um so the problem with the war on drugs was that it targeted black, well, people, I ain't gonna say just black people, people of color, um which they caused them to have longer prison sentences than people unmelanated people.
Hmm.
The consequences were higher, and after the effects of them being like jails began to be overpopulated with our people, um which caused some people who were probably in for heavier sentences to come up a lot sooner for parole, because now they're making room for all of these people they had to pick up from this new law or this new movement that kicked into gear, which caused more disparity for our people. When they came home, the consequences were they had limited opportunities because now they have a
Oh,
mark on their background. um a lot of them came home to nothing, like, which
Wow.
caused a large numbers of homelessness, um and which caused a higher increase in poverty, um so which set them when I was younger, my grandmother used to always tell us that we had to um study twice as hard to be half as good.
Yes.
um
Hmm.
with that in mind, like with these men and women, because it wasn't just men, it was women too that were coming home after being incarcerated for a long period of time. They were behind the eight ball, so to speak. Um, so a lot of opportunities that we already were at risk of not gaining. Imagine going to jail and coming home. Now you can't get anything. At that time, like a lot of laws have changed, but like no voting rights. You could barely work at McDonald's. Well, McDonald's might have been your best bet,
Mhm.
which
Hmm. Hmm.
nowadays, which with a background, it's actually gotten a lot worse because people are not playing with backgrounds. Like McDonald's might not
Really?
hire you at this point.
And
But
Wow.
but that whole movement, which was supposed to be a set to change America, really targeted us to push us back further than we already were. Um, how do you guys feel about that? Like, do you think that the effects of the war on drugs and those movements, how do you feel like they impact like 2025? Like,
I feel like
You know what, when you ask that question, I'm always thinking from that mental health brain to
yeah,
some degree, and I think about the effect of fathers who have been away for years, or mothers who have been away for years, or parents whom we have lost. You know, in that generation, we lost whole we lost whole mothers and fathers.
yes,
And so then we have children who were raised again by big mamas who were generationally, and in your brain, when you are a grandparent, your brain changes from being in parental mode. So imagine the difficulty of
Uh,
a grandparent having to raise a grandchild. It's not that they don't love them, but listen, when you get to a certain age, and I'm there now, I got baby kids, right? Well, she ain't a baby no more. She's gonna be 9. But somebody younger than her come to the house, I want to send them home.
quickly.
Right, because my brain is moving into grandparent stage. And I never understood it when my mom used to say, no, no, you take these babies. But they're your grandkids. No, you take these babies. It wasn't that they didn't love them. It's just their brain moved into another segment.
It's
yeah,
a
So
skip
we,
of a generation, right?
yes, it's a skip. So we've got grandparents in that time because of mass incarceration due to all the proclivities that were raising grandchildren. And so now grandmama is now mama. Parents then come back home and are more like siblings to the children,
Yes.
their children.
Wanting the
That,
respect of parentage.
yes, that whole thing became confusing to a lot of kids and families. I don't know if anybody has personally experienced that.
Yeah.
Um, Go ahead.
Yeah. Because now the parent coming back home has been is accused of abandonment now. They
Yes.
and now you weren't there. Big mama was there for me. She's my mama now. It's like
yeah,
it's like that's that whole issue. But that's not the mental health part of it. Is the lasting effect that they want, because there was a time that you could commit a crime, go spend 6 months to a year in jail, come back and start over. Back in the
Hmm.
80s, what they started doing is, on top of your jail sentence, they were dropping inordinate, crazy amounts of fines for every charge you were guilty of. So
yeah,
you might go to jail for a year, but come out with a $30,000 in debt to the government. And so there's this thing where they were putting you in jail, and then one day the government realized there really is a business here.
mm-hmm.
We house you and shelter you in this spot. We're going to feed you, and in the process of this, you'll make um, uh, we can reinforce slave labor. So now you're making um, license plates for 15 cents an hour, and
mhm,
they reincorporated slave labor during in the prisons, and now it's big business. Now people are becoming millionaires by making prisons, and now they're giving you these fines when you come out, right? And you have a record. So if McDonald's or another place hires you, and then the government is garnishing a portion of your check on your minimum wage. The thing is, you cannot get a come up. You cannot rebound unless you do something else criminal, or you become a sports person, or you invest the 10 years to go to school and get a meaningful degree, or you step into a trade. And so
mm,
Hmm.
there's
yeah,
reasons why we mad.
Right, right.
There's a
Which,
reason.
which, I'm
You
sorry.
can't sugar honey iced tea. That's an East Coast thing. You can't sugar honey iced
I
tea,
see.
SHIT, on every part of our generation and our culture,
Yeah.
and then say don't be mad.
Mhm. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I guess I want to get stuck here because now I'm thinking um about the fact that okay, now people feel like they've gotten out of the system when they get when they get out of prison, but they're actually still in it because you can't do anything, you can't vote, you can't get a good job. So it feels like the intention or the idea or the statistic wise is that we're going to see you again because there's
Uh-huh.
nothing that you can do out here.
Right.
So it's a cyclical situation when it's supposed to be a quote unquote rehabilitation center. But I've worked in a jail before. It ain't nothing. It ain't no. There's no rehabilitation going on. Um, they they sit in cells. You know, if they have work, there's nothing really being really being taught. And the problem is that you treat these people like animals,
I was about to
and
say,
then there's an expectation for them to now go out and be civilized citizens when you didn't do what quote unquote your building says, which is to rehabilitate them in order for them to be able to now return back to society. And unfortunately, it just feels like that the system's meant for you to keep coming back.
Yeah.
it's the mission statement that just keeps the money in. It keeps them
Yeah,
just keeps the money coming in. Because you just said you put a human in a cage,
yeah,
but you don't expect them not to come out as an animal.
yeah,
Yeah.
Because the thing
Mm.
is not as easy to jump back into society. And once you feel like you've tried everything there is to try, it's like, well, I might as well go back to what I already know to be able to make a. And the thing is, for a lot of men, I know that they want to be able to provide for their family. So at that point, it becomes by any means necessary, and they go back to what they know after they've tried several things that just
yeah.
don't happen. And then it's like, yep, we was waiting on you, and then they come pick them right on back up.
Yeah.
Listen, you know how
Or
many
in
people
a
I've
cycle.
seen working in jail where it's like they'll tell me, they be like, "Love you, Brian. I'll see you in a few weeks," because
Wow.
they know they coming back. They know they coming back because one, they either know that there's nothing else they're going to try, but there's nothing else that they can do, so they'll purposely do something
Yeah,
in order for somebody to come on pick me up because I tried. I can't. I don't know what else to do. So and they get caught in that cycle to where there's people that I knew working there where that was their life. Like jail was the only thing that they knew. So if they got free, they didn't know where else to go, what else to do. They said, I'm going back home. They going back to jail.
Mm.
You know what
You
I'm
know,
saying?
Bishop,
You know what I'm saying? I think the gag of that of all this though about people who have felonies that can't get a job at McDonald's, but you definitely can be the president of the United States.
absolutely.
okay,
I
all right.
think
So
that
Bishop,
for our
look,
Apparently so, Brian.
yeah.
Yes, you're right.
So
You too can run for president.
yeah. So here goes a personal story. So my father was arrested and incarcerated, and for the majority of my life, I still don't know why. I keep on. I. There are two stories connected to my father going to jail. One was rape, and the other was assaulting police officers. And so my father, um, he gets out of jail. He comes home. My mom turns over the money, her money that she gives him the check, and he starts running the money. And um, all of a sudden, we start having to move. My father, I didn't know who these people were. My father would take me and give me some money and say, walk up to that house and give them this money. and tell him that I'll be in touch with him. I had no idea that my father was sending me to pay off his loan sharks. I didn't know this, right? And so one day, the man whose house I've been going to late at night with my dad, he shows up at my house and he said this to me. He said, Adam, tell Donna, my mom, tell your mom that you and Lanky, my oldest brother, cannot come to my house anymore, or there's going to be a problem. So we're dealing with this stuff, right?
Mhm.
Years later, my father gets saved, but he's always having these money struggles. And one day he calls me over to his hotel because he was living in a hotel. And he said, Adam, it took me 12 years to recognize this. 12 years. I said, what? He said, when I was in prison, the only thing I had to worry about was my toothbrush, my toiletries, and my food. I never had to worry about I didn't have to pay rent for my cell. I didn't have to do that stuff. He said,
Um,
so I was trained in there to take care of my toiletries, my food, my toothbrush and stuff like that. He said, and that's the reason, Adam, why our home always had food, toiletries, and this stuff for the bathroom. We always had that stuff, but we kept getting kicked out of our home and our rent until you started talking, Bishop. I'm like, when that came back to me, it's like, yeah, that's the rehab. That's the rehab. We're gonna habilitate you, not rehabilitate you. We're gonna habilitate you to being able to only control what gives you pleasure, but not security.
wow,
Mm.
that's good.
Yeah.
It's crazy how these experiences impact family. It's real life things, right? And sometimes going back long enough to trace the influences, all of that gets shown to a child. They repeat a pattern, never having the actually same experience, but they do the same thing.
Yeah.
We are, as children, we are sponges, osmosis. We don't really learn, we absorb. And then we get to unlearn or learn new, what we choose to keep or throw away. Right. So it's just so when you see generational incarceration, that's why. When you see generational drug addiction, that's why. When you see generational sexaholics, or my daddy slept with women, so that's what I know to do, and my grandfather did. That's what you do. And sometimes in order for you to catch it, you got to be aware of it. But that's how it impacts the families.
Hey,
It
Coach,
impacts us.
can you explain the difference between learning and absorbing?
Well, to me, I think, I've learned, we listen to the terminology of, our kids are influenced by our nature and nurture, nature being our DNA, nurture being our environments, right? But when I look at my children today and I think about them, I'm like, learning would suggest that you're actively engaging your brain. They're not actively engaging their brain.
Okay.
They are absorbing what they see and then they just repeat it.
Mhm.
Wow.
So I sound like my mama because I didn't actively try to sound like her. I just heard her talking all the time and I
Yeah.
absorbed it. And so we continue that. And so when we listen to our own children, Dad, you sound like me. How did that happen? They didn't actively try, they just absorbed what the environment presented. And so sometimes when we get to a place of awareness, we start to recognize that's why we're saying now with some of the things that we're doing with our children. Well, my mom raised me like this. And while that was okay for me, or it was not okay for me, I'm going to do this differently. I get to unlearn or relearn so that I can implement something else. That's active learning to me,
That's not
active learning, right? And that's why as adults, we were taught how to think. And if we were not framed in our thinking, we'll have an easier job actively engaging our brain at these adult stages and choosing. That's why the goal, we should have all been taught how to think, because when we become adults, you will need to think.
Yeah.
You'll need to make
Yeah.
decisions and make different opportunities and positions and unlearn things and relearn new things. And if you don't know how to think, none of the information will hold. And that becomes problematic, but that's a whole different conversation. We wasn't supposed to go there. We just talking about this mass incarceration thing. I know
Yeah.
Bernicia has for us tonight one more question, and then we're gonna wrap
Yeah.
this thing up. Well, wow, this was so good so far.
Hmm.
Take us there, B.
Oh, I'm sorry. I couldn't get off of mute.
Okay.
It's okay.
um, okay. Well, I actually had well, I'm gonna just do I had two more points, but I'm gonna just stick with the physical health. Um the
If you can merge them, then go for it.
No, no, okay. I was just saying, like, it's another, because like the mass incarceration, we could be here for a long time
Mm-hmm.
talking about that. That
Mm-hmm.
part is very heavy. Um, but another highlight was like our physical health. Reverting back to like slavery times. Um, as we all know, we would eat the scraps of what the
Mm-hmm.
masters would give, and we spiced it and made something out of nothing.
Mm-hmm.
After slavery was over, those traditions kind of followed us because we were left with next to nothing. So we knew how to make the most out of fatbacks and um the dirtiest part of the cow or the pig. And we was eating chitlins and all kind of stuff because we were just being trying to be eventful with what we had left. So but all of those effects of those things cause us to have a lot of health problems further down the line, such as diabetes and heart disease from poor food choices. But minorities, particularly African Americans, we didn't have a lot of healthier choices. So we grew up eating lima beans and neck bones, and or we might not have had ribs, but we might have had a pork shoulder with and then it brought us over many nights with some rice, but the pork is very high in sodium, which causes to have high blood pressure. Um,
I'm sorry, is
and
lima beans not good for you? Lima beans
no,
not good?
beans are wonderful.
Okay.
Beans are wonderful
Okay.
for fiber. It's what we put in the beans. We didn't just eat the beans.
Yeah, yeah,
We
yeah.
had
Said a neck
neck
bone in
bone.
there.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's a
Ooh,
neck
that sounds good.
bone in there.
and it'd be good.
Um, or all of the seasonings that we put in it to spice it. The salt, the pepper, garlic pepper, garlic salt, like all of those things that we spiced everything. That's what caused the our blood pressure to raise. We are at a greater risk for heart disease and for diabetes. Um, and we so graciously get handed down those kinds of diseases down to our children, to our grandchildren, which are people our whole bloodline at risk because of how great grandmom used to eat.
Mhm.
It's now in our history. And I know you all can relate at some point. Somebody, what at least one of us has a history of diabetes in their family or hypertension. About all of those things, but those are again are we that are foundationally we started off with these meal choices. We ain't have a choice. We kind of had we ain't had no choice but to eat the fat back and the pork shoulder and all of those because it's cheaper. It was cheaper. Let's start with that. We can go to the store and go buy some ribs. That pack of chicken might have been 89 cents, or
Mm-hmm.
or those pork chops might have been two for $1
Yeah,
at that time when we made the most out of it. That was a meal for about 3 weeks. And I know that we all can relate at some portion. I don't think we need to expound on that because it is what it is. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and my last point was our affirmations. Um, I wanted to talk about it. In 19, I think it was 1964, a song came out. Go ahead with your best self. Say it loud. I'm
I'm
black
black
and
and
I'm
I'm
Black and
proud.
I'm
proud.
proud. Yes.
That was in that was in that I believe that was in 1964. It said when James Brown released that song. But affirmations like today now everybody's on the affirmation kick. You are wonderful. You are beautiful. You are loved. But in the 60s, in the 70s, when you hearing about how big our noses are, how full our lips are, and how ugly our skin is, we needed something that boosted the morale of being black because it wasn't always a badge of honor to be an African American woman. It was
Mhm.
first of all, it was horrible to be a woman. Now, and you're a black woman. Now you got two strikes against you. So affirmations were something that like when Maya Angelou started wrote her poem about being a phenomenal woman. I'm pretty sure she didn't write that out of her joy. She brought
Wow.
that probably definitely came up about after hearing about how horrible she was, like, and ain't I a woman? So
Mhm.
affirmations, we needed something to remind us of how great we are. And it might not have been sometimes when we write those things, we don't necessarily believe them in the beginning.
Mhm.
And the idea is to keep saying it so that it becomes true. The more you say it, the more true it becomes. So
Mhm.
you wake up every morning saying you're beautiful. You might not feel like that. You don't feel
Mhm.
beautiful every time that you say that, but you're saying it
Mhm.
to train your brain to believe it.
Mhm. Mhm.
Um, so in those times when you're hearing about how everybody when relaxers came out, we were trying to straighten our hair to look like unmelanated people. And it's crazy that today going natural is like it's a norm now. Before it was like,
Mhm.
well, why would you want your hair to be nappy and
Mhm.
naughty? Those
Mhm.
we were convinced that our natural curls were ugly or were horrible or it went against the status quo or the norms of what Hollywood and those pictures that Hollywood depicts. But now everybody's natural. People wearing braids and plaits and twists. Apostle then started her lock journey. Everybody,
Yeah.
we out here. We out here.
Mhm. Mhm.
So that was it. How do you guys this is definitely my last point, but as it relates to affirmations, do you guys do those or have ever done those at one point in
Absolutely.
time?
Absolutely. Affirmations are warfare. Affirmations are warfare against your own personal psyche. It's
Mhm.
warfare against the mind wars or the word curses of your family and your friends, the ones who said, "Oh, you ain't never going to do this," or "You don't know how to do this," or whatever. So affirmations are a defensive. They are a defensive mechanism to protect you against outside forces, while at the same time an offensive measure that pushes
Mhm.
you or drives you into a space. I wrote a book called The Phenomenal Woman, and my
Mhm.
statement in that book said, "You're phenomenal." Even though people said this, you're a genius, and your
Mhm.
phenomenal genius is about to be followed by your phenomenal success. And
Mm,
and it's statements like that because you're going to find that nobody can affirm your people like you,
Yeah.
Mhm.
um, because we have the same history, the same experience. And so if you don't, I think that affirmations is such a brilliant thought process, Bernicia, because it was something that we didn't have growing up. Affirmations almost feels like, right, it feels like it just started for the black person,
mhm.
for real, and like it just started for us because in the Pentecostal church, they said you were bad, so go ahead with your bad self.
Mhm.
Didn't really sound really good, but when
Yeah.
James Brown said it, he was fighting against a stereotype, saying we don't care what you think about us, we're still amazing. So
Yeah.
yeah, so affirmations are so powerful, and it makes you wonder now, why did we rob ourselves of that? I can give you a scripture that what people used to use. The scripture was, we don't want anybody to think more highly of themselves than they are. How? I'm a child of God. I'm a son of God. That's very high. I'm seated with him in heavenly places. That's very high. You know what I mean? And so I don't know. I don't know when thinking of ourselves more highly than we ought and speaking life, like, why is it wrong for me to speak a life to my brother or me to speak life to my sister? I saw this woman, I don't remember her name. She wrote a poem to her broken Black men. And it started off with, who broke you? Who broke you? Because what she was saying was, her Black women didn't break Black men. So for Black men to then turn around and be offensive or abusive to Black women when Black women didn't break the Black men, it's like, go ahead and look at yourself. Look at yourself again, because you were broken by something outside of you, and now you need to fight against that. So I think I'm about to go on a whole other tangent.
I mean, listen, because that could have been a whole conversation right there that we could have talked about. Listen.
Just say we did affirmations. I was raised on them and didn't know what they were called. And then now I've changed my whole script of how I greet people. I used to look at people crazy with the whole grand rising thing. And once my sister-in-law explained the whole good morning thing, she was like, yeah, but morning, that coming out of your mouth is you speaking morning over your life. And she was like, that's not what you want. And it's like, yeah, so it's like, you're so right about that. So when did I get that from her? I got that from her in November because I saw her. We were all together for Thanksgiving. And once that happened, um, I was like, Lord, you know what? I'm gonna change the way that I greet people in the morning. And depending on the type of day that I want or what I feel like I may need or whatever the case may be, that's how I greet people. So now, I don't necessarily say grand rising, but I do say blessed risings. And I feel like every time I say that, like I have an even better day than the day before. And I'm not gonna lie, rich risings was something that I was definitely saying and continue to say. And ever since I started saying rich risings, it seems like my money has it has increased. Um, and I think it's along the lines of, yes, that is a thought process, but as you're writing it, you're also reading it, and you're reading that into your spirit and into your mental, to where naturally you just start to maneuver to get yourself to that place of whatever it is that you spoke over your day and or whatever you want to see in your future. So yeah, even though I'm not rich yet, me saying rich risings is me trying to make sure I maneuver to be able to, I'm not gonna say penny pinch, but to save or to do the extra work or to get the extra rest or to do whatever it is that I need to contribute to getting to that place. And I've had so many better days with just saying blessed risings as well. Um, I used to be in a funk for a very long time, and I don't feel like I'm in that funk anymore. I've been trying to change my mindset on that. So yeah, affirmations are really, really, really important. And I don't care what nobody say. I always look at myself, I'm like, girl, you look good. You was a good looking woman. Yeah, you sound good, you look good, your hair good, all that good stuff. But that's something I was brought up on. My mom always encouraged us, always spoke life into us, and I just carried that with me. Affirmations are important.
Speak over yourself.
Yeah.
Hey, I have a request, and it's female driven. When you were talking about mass incarceration, Bernicia, thought about um, all the paperwork that they take you through when they're putting you into jail, right? Um, And I started wondering, because um, uh, Pastor Charles Matthews from California had started talking about this. Now, I don't know if if they actually did it in California, but I remember he had mentioned that there are a lot of men who were coming out of prisons who were catching sexually transmitted diseases in prison. And then because they weren't talking about it, they were transferring these things over to their women once they got out. And now the women are carrying these diseases. And so I was just while you were talking about incarceration, because the men aren't the only ones hurting. At the end of the day, they come home and they impart whatever they may have received there into their women, or vice versa. Women getting it in prison, imparting to their male counterpart or whatever. And maybe is like if we could do something maybe like uh, a PSA, a public service announcement, where we encourage men and women. If you have a loved one who's coming out of prison, to get their shots, get checked for whatever these things are, so that we're not perpetuating other diseases on top of what we already deal with. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's a great idea because
Yeah.
there's a lot of shame around it, which is why people don't talk about it. So,
Yes.
and that's a whole other conversation because in incarceration, we think that people just like to be segregated and in their own rooms, but in every space, every organism is going to look for ways to connect in every space. And even if those connections are not normalized or inordinate, what was what was off limits to you in your freedom will become normalized to you when you are locked up.
Yeah.
There's a lot of things that can happen. And so when people are released from those spaces, there's a lot of shame and guilt and expectation to return back to the person that you were, but you are not the person that you were.
Yeah.
And you've had some experiences that you don't even want to talk about. And so we've got trauma, PTSD, all of that. And it is very difficult. And I speak this to a lot of our African American men too. It's probably very difficult to integrate. And you all are not always the best at sharing. So as women, we have to know it, or as professionals, we have to understand it and give you room. But it would be helpful if after such tragedies that individuals feel like they have the room to speak about it, share about it, talk about it. And so those are a lot of things that need to happen with that, creating environments, creating safe spaces or brave spaces, all of those other things that come with that. But that's a really excellent point. And with every point, there is a system that needs to be developed if it's not developed already. So
Yeah.
yeah, great spaces. I love the affirmation thought too. It's so funny because even when Maya Angelou, sorry,
Ain't your
Angela Maya.
mama?
was right, yes, was writing that story. She had a very heavy background of domestic violence. She was a beaten
Yes.
woman. So
Yes.
for her to, and I bring that highlight, and I'll stop with this. I bring that highlight because she was a woman that was in a deficit, and her poetry was bringing her frequency up and out. You can do affirmations with someone who doesn't have the level of deficiency that our culture has, and they'll immediately respond, seemingly. But it will take us double in those regards because we are at a deficit in how we feel about ourselves, on top of the fact of where people have placed us, right?
Mm-hmm.
So affirmations don't always seem like they're working at first. But the scripture, what is it? Philippians, it says, whatsoever things are just and pure, if there's any virtue and in there, if there's any praise, think on
Praise.
these things. Well, virtue is truth. And if I'm saying something that I don't truly believe about myself, it's going to be harder to attach. But I have to keep believing, because then it's like, okay, we speak those things that are not as though they were. We don't think about it in the sense of affirmations. We always think about that in money and materialism, but there is a deficit in our community, in an emotional space that has to be raised. And that's
Yeah.
what we call raising frequency levels. And affirmations can do a lot of that. It can change your mindset, but it has to be disciplined and repetitious. It
Yeah.
has to be constant. You look at yourself and may not need somebody else to affirm yourself. That's why I love the story of David. The same people that loved him crucified him because they was mad that all the women and children were taken. So he had to encourage himself. So there are things that we learn through the journey, and a lot of scriptures historically give us a lot of information, gives us context, yes, but you have to continue to do that work on your own. Bernicia, this was amazing. Thank you for facilitating this conversation. This was so good. And I hope that everybody who was listening to us tonight talk about melanin and the Black family. And there's no way to cover the entire context of this conversation, but I hope that we will bring more highlights throughout this year, that we won't wait until next year to speak about it. I'm sure some of that will be interwoven into some of the things that we're going to do throughout the year anyway, but this was a phenomenal topic, and it brings to light all of the colloquialisms that we have in our African American culture. We get to raise each other as much as we're raising ourselves. And that's why it's so important for us to speak life and let our melanin. That was a good conversation too. If you haven't listened to that conversation, go back to the melanin and spirituality conversation. But imagine if I speak to you, right, guys, if I speak to you and I say something powerful and positive to you, that your melanin rushes to the top and rushes to attention and then starts to activate. That's what we call goosebumps.
Mm-hmm.
We all like to hear good things, positive things, things that put us in execution. What you do with your energy is up to you, but try, if at all possible, to speak well to yourself. Let your soul learn a kind language, and then speak well to other people. Even they out in these streets acting like hellions. We don't know why they acting like hellions, but speak well to them and let their melanin rise to the surface. Give them that good juju stuff. Listen, this was
Mm-hmm.
an amazing conversation. We are again, if you feel like this will benefit someone, please share the conversation. Put some notes in the chat and we will respond to them. And yeah, then after this, I don't know what we're going to do. We got to figure it out. But we will come back at some point. We're coming back live at some point, and we're going to do something live. I think it's going to be around that melanin and sports that we're coming back and we're going live. And so we'll do that. But we really appreciate all of you for engaging in this. And please don't stop. Follow the page, like whatever page that you saw this on, and follow us, because we're migrating to YouTube and we're intentionally doing that for a reason. And so we're giving time for that space to grow. So follow that page over there as well. It is at the Evolution Church SoFlo. I think that's the page. Yeah. We'll figure it out. If it's wrong, come back and tell me that it was wrong. But I think that that's the handle for it. So for all of the forumers tonight, panelists rather, we appreciate you all. Have a good night, and we'll see you again next Tuesday. Take care.
Gonna happen in this year, and I am grateful that I made it here. Yesterday's gone, and a new day has appeared, and I am grateful that I made it here. Blessings gonna find me here, oh yeah. Favor gonna find me here, oh yeah, yeah, yeah. I miss money gonna